Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Radically Loved Radio. I am joined by a very special guest today. I've actually been looking forward to talking to him for a long time, and why this hadn't happened before is probably my fault somehow. I'm going to try and figure that out. But we have Coach Mike. Coach Mike is on the show. Everybody, welcome him. Here's your clap track.
Thank you, Rosie. And I'm giving you as I come onto the show, I'm giving you that slow, proud clap.
Perfect. That's so good. Well, I'm excited to chat with you because I know my mic is going crazy. I know that you have a new book that just came out, and it's called "One Decision: The First Step to a Better Life." And I did read Best Self, so I was already familiar with your work, and I really loved. I mean, everything in this book really spoke to me, and it really helped me reflect on the decisions that I made in my life like earlier on. And we have a lot of similarities background wise. And I just was really excited to just see you create something that was so um, doable. You know, the steps you talk about, the obstacles that you talk about. I want you to be my coach, you know?
Well, we could talk. Well, look, I'm grateful for you asking me to come on, your show. And also, you know, uh, I get asked to go on different shows and I'll do the research ahead of time and I'll be like, and part of what I look for is somebody's like intention of why they're creating content, and also if they kind of march to their own beat and pursue their own journey. And so I was excited to talk to you because you click all those boxes. So
Oh, that is that is awesome. Thank you. I'm blushing. Oh, I'm blushing. Okay, so before we actually started recording, we were having this epic conversation, and I'm like, I want us to be able to talk about everything. But one of the main things that I'm curious to ask you about is, this has been your life's work. You've been doing this for a long time, and you have such an incredible story and such an incredible journey that's so inspiring. And I find I'm like, what is it about people like you that can overcome such adversity and then just literally turn your life around and then become this like behemoth of motivation and inspiring energy? Like I've always wanted to know, like, what is that? Like, how does that happen? How do you go from being a drug dealer to being an
right.
addict to like now you're this like force in this space with, working with people like Dr. Phil and doing just incredible amounts of work in the world. Tell us how it happens.
Well, I think for anyone, when they can turn pain into inspiration, they can do something pretty magical. So when people can take their story and become a victor around it, like horrible things happen to so many people growing up, and so many environments that people live in that we can't control. And I really think it's, for me at least, I made a commitment, like, and got proud and some pride in, like, yeah, I was a disaster and I hated myself, but now I'm going to get to the other side of it. And when you can do that, I feel like the universe kind of wraps its arms around you a bit.
Mm, yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, that's really what radically loved is all about. I mean, it's about the belief that we are radically loved and radically supported by God, source, whatever higher power you believe in, that the universe works for us and not against us. I'm curious, after the year that we had last year, uh, were you able to still maintain that same mental acuity in this resilient space where you could just say like, oh, nobody fucking knows what's going on, but we are gonna get through this, and to keep that momentum? Or did you also encounter some bumps along the way?
Yeah, I definitely had bumps along the way. I mean, I think I had bumps along the way. Even I think there's like this like uh sometimes we rewrite history. The truth is there's bumps along the way every year, and the struggles are every year. And sometimes I can tell you the struggles when I was younger were a lot more difficult than the struggles over this past year.
Mm,
Um, but we can get stuck, right? Because it's the most recent thing. And I I think that like at least in one decision, I started rewriting it during COVID, and then I dedicated the book to the person that like, feels a little lost or is all alone. And I think, during COVID, I was all alone. And so sometimes what we create is a product of what we need to hear and what others need to hear. And it created an opportunity for me to go, okay, what about that person who's all alone right now and is lost or needs to reinvent their career or is beating themselves up or feels like no one loves them? And
mhm.
so again, I took like that as inspiration. Um, and I create that character that I'm like speaking to. and but I'm an emotional roller coaster. Some people are very capable of being very grounded all the time. Some of us need to meditate and yoga our asses off. I did yoga last night, with a skill yoga. It's like an app. And it was I was working on my warrior pose,
Oh,
so
yes.
warrior 3.
Balance.
Yes. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, you know how it is. It's interesting that we don't realize that we've had harder moments than this past year.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. It's true. You know, it's so interesting because I feel like it's so easy to forget. I mean, everything we do, we forget. We have like uh amnesia most of the time. We practice because we forget what it's like to be connected, or we forget to know what it's like to feel good. And so there's this poem in one of Mark Nepo's book that talks about uh slowing down is remembering and hurried is forgetting, right? So when you're in a
Mm.
hurry, it's easy to forget, and when you're slowing down, it's so much easier to remember those things. That what you're saying, our ability to reflect and see that maybe we are more resilient than we think. So were you writing this book during COVID?
Well, I was rewriting the book during COVID.
Okay. How was
um,
how was that? What was that
I'm
process
listen.
like?
I find I push myself really hard when we all do, right? When we write books, some people will, I don't know, I suppose, get a theme and then bring in a ghostwriter and go let them tell the story. For me, I'm like in every detail. And I figured that people needed to realize that um, I mean, it was when I was rewriting it, it was interesting, but I think it allowed for a more modern day like piece of work to help people. Like some of the stuff around jobs and employment, I tweaked a little bit, some stuff around health, just from
Mhm.
my experience working with people during COVID. The stories that they tell themselves are a little bit different. Um, and but it was tough. I mean, it was definitely tough, to be honest. And it's just interesting that, sometimes I have to like remind myself to be in gratitude and be like, oh my God, I can't believe anyone's paying me to write a book. Like, like, or
I mean,
Or like
Yeah,
tomorrow,
no.
someone pays me to speak and they pay me a large fee and they're buying a ton of books and I do it over 45 minutes on Zoom. And I'm just like, not that I don't think I'm good enough. It's just more like it's a trip, right? It's a trip when you
Yeah.
experience things that are beyond your wildest dreams.
Yes. I love that you're saying that because it's so true. Uh it's such a wild thing because people on the other side that maybe that's their dream, that's their mission, and that's what they want, and that's all they want. When you're in that space, I mean, I'm still every week that goes by, I'm like, oh, are they gonna ask for their advance back? Like
I
when
know.
is the
You're
time?
looking over the contract to see what
Yes.
the
What exactly? Like what when did they ask for this back? Because this is this real? Do they know that it's me? Like that whole thing, which I feel like is another separate topic. But I feel like part of what creates that transformation is to at least have the possibility that transformation can occur or that things can change in your life or that there is a possibility that you can succeed. Um, I want to talk about how one decision applies to this because I remember reading uh, you have an acronym that you use,
Mhm.
right? And I was thinking about that. I'm like, wow, this is such a great way to remember to for me the what I my takeaway was okay, how do I continue to stay grounded? How do I continue to stay in this reality? How can I prove myself right instead of proving myself wrong? So can you tell us how what the acronym is and how you
Yeah.
came up with it?
Well, so in so before I did this, like, which is really being in the as a public figure has only been, gosh, 2 years, 2.5 years. I had no vision of it. I didn't expect to ever be on television or, to be working with whatever. Like I didn't have this vision, but I, I guess what I'm trying to say is, uh, like behind every decision we make, and I don't even know why I just said that. Like I didn't have this. Like part of it, what I struggle with sometimes, to be honest, is I'm like, sometimes I don't know, or I'm challenged by the difference of being humble and owning.
Mm,
Like, like it's just it's like I own it, but then I'm like, oh, am I being humble? Like, I don't know. It's as I'm talking to you, for whatever reason, of what keeps coming up for me is this is a trip. Like that's just what keeps coming up for
mm,
me. I don't know why it keeps coming up for me, but it just keeps coming up for me. And and before I did what I do now, I was a counselor. So I was an alcohol and drug abuse counselor. And then I traveled the world doing interventions. Well, in school, they talk about something called cognitive distortions. And that's part of what's kind of the framework of cognitive behavioral therapy is there's distorted thinking that then cause someone to make decisions that aren't in their best interest, or it causes them to feel unhappy, and they're distorted thinking. It's a distorted lens, and usually there's about 10 of them in CBT. So what I do is I pulled from that a coaching formula that's a lot more simple, and that is a hack to distorted thinking. And so I created, there's a force, there's either a negative force or a positive force. And what I found with working with people through the years is usually when somebody is struggling to make a decision, or is really unhappy, or feels lost or disconnected, that there's one of five things that happens. And the acronym for force is someone's fortune telling, overgeneralizing, right fighting or having rigid thinking, confused purpose, or emotional reasoning. And usually when somebody's struggling, if it fits in those five categories, sometimes it fits in several of them. And the positive force is kind of the hack. So for fortune telling, it would be fact finding. For overgeneralizing, it would be objective thinking. For rigidity, it would be relaxed. For confused purpose, it'd be clarified purpose. And for emotional reasoning, it would be evidence based thinking. And so before making a decision, it's really good, especially decisions that are creating a lot of anxiety or fear. It's really good to check our filter. And so that's kind of the filtering system where uh, it helps people get out of that cognitive loop of like the same fear just coming up every day and into kind of the facts of life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I think it's such a great way to uh, discern all of those things for ourselves. I mean, this is one of the things that I find to be really difficult, especially in the world that we are in now. There's so many numbing tools out there. There's, substances, there's
Mm,
social media, technology, whatever it may be. We have really numbed, in my opinion, we've really numbed our ability to discern, to be able to tell the difference whether am I, working with the positive force or am I working with the
yeah.
negative force? Like which one am I in and how do I discern if I'm not fully in my present state where I can really tune in? And so for me, that gauge has become clear the more grounded I am in my it, this is a little bit of a slippery slope, right? But in my own truth, right? In my own ability to feel like I'm at home here. I
Mm,
feel the most comfortable and confident in here. And that's where I can move that's my barometer. It's like if I know that I'm going off the deep end and I'm, fortune telling, then I will know, okay, I am future projecting. I don't even actually know if that's real. I can go back into my body and say, okay, take a breath, come back to the present moment and, relax and go into instead fact finding. Okay. Is it a fact that I can fail and maybe my book doesn't do well? That's not a fact, it's a possibility, but there's no knowing. As of this moment, that book hasn't even come out yet. So what are you doing? The fact is you got a book deal and you are writing, you're in the process of writing and editing this book. So rest in that. Right. So I like that you gave us those parameters because I feel like the more we can recognize what our own gauge is and
hmm
really all these tools, I'm curious to hear what your opinion is. Like all of these tools that we learn from people or coaches like we have to implement them ourselves. Like we
hmm
have to do you can be out there and I watch you all the time, coaching people and like giving them this really great prolific advice and it's going to be on them. Like it doesn't affect you at all. Like whether they do it or not, it's like you're just giving them the information, right?
Yeah, so what I do is and I try to do this and I try to do it if someone's motivated, right? Like
Right.
if they actually want to change. Because some people, let's say if I go on Instagram with them, they just want attention, you know, they don't want to change
Right.
and they're making something up. And I know it in that moment and I don't want to hurt their self esteem by going in on them. And I try my best just to be spiritually centered. But what I do is I have a free group on Tuesday nights, which you should come to sometime and maybe speak or
Yeah, I'd
do
love
an
to.
exercise. It's every Tuesday. So like tonight I have Les Brown speaking, who's a great speaker. And what I do is I try to connect people. So like I have a Facebook community, I have a texting community, I have people I go on Instagram with. I'll create this empowerment group and I try to connect the people with each other because part of change um, and how change works is some sense of community. There's a great belief that sure, you could sit on your ass on an island and look around and live there for the rest of your life and love everything about it. But the reality is we need each other. And there's something that really great happens when we connect with each other. Sometimes it's why even when we're in the same room with someone and nothing's really said, we can feel like we're being hugged. And it's just because we're around people we love. And so the challenge right now with COVID is, how do you create a sense of community for people? And so to that point that you're making, yes, it's great if we go, here's your change. And it's great when people feel seen.
Mhm.
But if there's no one else that can continually be seen with them, it becomes a harder road. The backpack's a lot heavier.
Mhm.
And so you're right. Um, the part of the first step to changing, from my experience, um, is getting insight. Like, if you get insight into yourself and you can get honest, um, it's also, everyone's so different. Like, there's no one way. Like, there's no my way, or it's whatever their way is for them, and it's not black and white. And um and so, yeah, I mean, to your point, I can look, I spent a lot of my career in my early days helping people get sober and helping people with psychiatric disorders, people who want to kill themselves, and a lot of people who are committed to keep using drugs, and didn't care about the consequences, and I would help them get sober.
Mhm.
So anything after that is a lot easier,
Mm.
from my experience of working with people. That was like my training ground for 5-6 years, was the trenches. So, getting someone to go on that walk every day, or getting that person to call their sister who they haven't talked to in a few years, is not as deep or life threatening. And as a coach, part of my that we're all coaches, right? Like I learned from you, just like you learned from me. I learned from the neighbor how to cut a tree. Like, there's there's this thing where, you know we're all we're all in this together. And like, I think as soon as a coach becomes uncoachable or has all the answers, uh it's a dead end street.
I always say be wary of anybody who says they have it all figured out. Like,
And be wary of someone who tries to get you to sign up with things for free to upsell you when you're vulnerable. Like, I feel
oh,
like that's part of my next mission over the next year. And I'm going to be launching a coaching certification school, but I'm going to offer, it's going to be very modern in the new day, launching in like 9 months. But like, you know, I just think like and I come from the clinical space where you don't upsell someone on therapy. You don't go, hey, I just helped you. Now you need to sign up for 40 sessions for a year-long program on how to work through your trauma. Like, that's like crazy to me. Like, I don't get it.
but that's everything that's in this space, everywhere I go, everywhere I look, then they're going to hit you with that. Now, if you join this
Until
for
fucking now, because I ain't gonna do it. And mark my words, I'm not gonna do it. And I'm gonna call out everyone else who is doing it, because that's not how I roll. There's a difference between uh uh speaking to help and speaking to sell. And
oh,
I don't think you have to sell. Like, and look, I'm a sober dude, ex-meth addict, trash can for drugs. I subscribe to attraction rather than promotion. If you're fucking great, attract greatness in the people you want. Like, and I guess I get a little, and it's probably my background and like seeing like rehabs taking,
yeah.
promising the cure and like charging crazy amounts of money, is like, I've noticed in the last few years since entering this coaching space that like there's, and I'm becoming more passionate about it, is you don't need to become a successful coach by selling people when they're vulnerable. When they're vulnerable, let them fucking be vulnerable and be in that space. Don't suddenly get their brains to think that they need to go spend $20,000 on you for a year to help themselves. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
I don't even know
oh,
how we got on this
I don't know,
tangent.
but it's really good because what you said really just I want to pull the string a little bit because I think it's so good. We've never talked about it on the podcast, but I see it all the time too, and it's funny because my partner and I will talk about it openly. We're like, it's this just insane. It's like speaking to sell and speaking. And look, I don't people want to they want to make their money. Fine, go do you, boo. That's great. But I feel like because I grew up in a family of alcoholics and addicts as well. And so I was very familiar. I was in the rooms in AA when I was a little child, you know?
Mm.
So to me, the cognitive dissonance was like, how are you here talking about not drinking? But then like the weekend comes along and then everybody's drinking. I'm just like, just confused, you know, but that's a separate topic. But so I really understood the severity of people that are actually in need and are vulnerable and are in that space where they want to do whatever they can to feel to get better and to just reconnect with who they are and what they are and they fall into these one of my a student of mine was in that same situation. She had gotten sober after using she was addicted to heroin for many years, got sober and then got into all the health and wellness things and in the health and wellness space and was really into like she started, she did one of my yoga teacher trainings and she was just like really wanting to just be in this space. And I was always like, oh, I practice discernment, like, oh, now people are inviting you to go do like plant medicine and all these things. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think that you need to just, I would give yourself maybe another 10 years and really just focus on your sobriety. And then she would, but the more she learned, the more susceptible she became because she just wanted to feel, she wanted the fast track to feeling good,
Mm.
and she went to this event that was exactly what you're saying, and the person that was speaking was like, now here's some free coaching, and now this is really going to take you to the next level, and it's going to be $30,000 and it's this thing, and we're going to meet once a month, and you're going to be, your life is going to completely change. But I'm like, it's that marketing thing that people do, the marketers that they promise all these
Mm-hmm.
things, but they just, not, it never happens. It's like
Right.
10 times your growth. And it's like, okay, it's not times 10 yet. Like, I don't understand, can you help me? So yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
get it. I totally agree with you. And I feel like it is a slippery slope for us, but it's again, with what we're talking about, this whole idea of practicing discernment or having what you said, insight, and being able to identify what is really going to serve your highest good. And are you willing to do the work that you're going to have to do in order to feel uh grounded and secure, and to have wise people around you and a good community that's going to help support your
Mm-hmm.
highest and not deplete your bank account.
Yeah, and also that you can do it, and you don't need to spend a fortune doing it.
Yeah.
Like you, everyone has the resources inside of themselves. They just need some guidance. Like, you know, uh, and everyone's different. I mean, I'm not thinking about someone who's rich and they want to just enhance their marketing strategy. I'm thinking of the person who, literally is pulling out a credit card with money they don't have to spend,
Yeah.
thinking that they're not capable of doing it on their own,
Mm-hmm.
when really you can, and there is no fast track. Like I've been in mental health for over 18 years. People will be like, I want what you have. I'm like, yeah, go sleep in $20 a night motels, dealing with some family with a junkie who's like pulling out a gun on you, and like you just don't, it's not how you get there. Like you got to
Right.
put in the work, and you got to want to help people be great. That's what I always tell. We're all artists, and it's just when you're continually pushing yourself to just be great in your art, I believe the universe connects you with other art, and you get to
Mm,
like play and have fun. And look, I'm probably on that topic, like, I know it's not radically loving, and I think it's just come up for me a few times, um or several times the last few months, as I've just been more on the internet and these ads pop up on my page. And I'm just hoping that someone who's listening realizes that, like, there's a lot of free communities. There's also, like, if you have the money, cool, like, go for it. Like, I do private jujitsu sessions, I do yoga, but if you don't have the money, there's a lot of ways to kind of get it going.
yeah, I agree. And I get that. I totally. I mean, this whole this podcast, like, is free. It's free content. I mean, you're listening to this man gets paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to speak, and Radically Love doesn't have the budget to afford him, but he's doing this for us. You know what I mean? Like, this
Listen, when the
is
sister does yoga, I'm like, I'm down. Like,
But this is
I
what I'm
already,
saying.
I'm like, oh, she does. My goal, literally, my goal has been able, which I don't think I'm going to accomplish because I'm 41, but I, I love that some people can stand and like hold their leg up, and you get so flexible. I'm just like, that's amazing. Does your partner do yoga too?
He does not, but he does jujitsu and karate. That's like
Oh,
his
really?
practice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did jujitsu too for a couple of years. And I wanted to get back into it. And actually we moved, we're in the valley. Um, and there's a jujitsu studio like less than 10 minutes away. And we've only been out here for a year and a half. And so
Where
obviously
were you
COVID
before
happened.
that?
In Laurel Canyon.
Got it.
Yeah. And then prior to that, we lived in Portland for like 4 years, but
What
I'm
does
born
he
in
do?
he's a uh accessory designer. He does like high-end leather accessories, belts, watches, guitar straps for like every major rock band, pop artist like Justin Timberlake, Jason Aldean,
Wow.
Metallica, so he's
He's
very,
good with
very.
detail.
Yes, and like super, super talented. And he's also been transitioning into he's been doing screenplays, he's been writing. So he's also a writer for the last 8 years. But he's been doing it's called Red Monkey Designs. He's been doing that since 95.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
he's been in being an entrepreneur basically his entire since he was 19. He's
Wow.
48, going to be 49 now. So yeah, I mean, he's good, solid. He's been on the podcast before. He
He's going to
doesn't.
help you with your writing as well. And
Yeah, like we help each other, and it's really great to have somebody that is into being creative as well. And so yeah, he's not just to answer your question, he actually used to be a professional ballet dancer, which is wild because
that's
he's like
awesome.
the manliest man, but it's like I love that he embraced the arts at a young age. So he was a professional ballet dancer. That's what brought him to LA. And so yeah, so he doesn't dance anymore, but he started to do karate and then jujitsu. And so that's kind of his thing. He definitely is not a yogi, but I always say that he's more of a yogi than I'll ever be because he's just like so even keeled and just
Right.
so supportive. I mean, we've been together for 18 years.
Wow.
So basically, like I always say, I joke, but I'm like, he took the best years of my life. But
Why do you think you
whatever.
got why do you think in your career and with all the people you were working with, and what do you think differentiated yourself?
I think that, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. I think that because of the way that I grew up, being in a chaotic environment and being around, basically just being in fear the first half of my life, I think I just, I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. And even though when I was a teenager and people kept saying that I was basically going to end up in jail, or like they basically were like, you're going to be a loser, just like everybody else. I just didn't, it's not that I wanted to prove people wrong. I just didn't want to prove them right. And so I think that that helped me just feel like, I don't know, like I just see the bigger picture, and I really empathize with people that are in pain and people that are suffering. And I just feel like I didn't have a fear of failure, with anything. I'm just like, you can't you can't hit rock bottom if you started from the bottom, you know?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm just like, everything is going to be upward. Every opportunity is just an opportunity, and I could just take it as that. And so when I started to do what I was doing, I just kept remembering like the reason why I was doing it. And look, not to say I love success. I want to be successful.
Yeah.
I want to, you know, make money. I want to be a
Yeah.
successful business person. Like I definitely do, but I think at the end of the day I'm like, okay, I get to go to bed every night feeling good about what I did today, and not feeling like I'm getting wrapped up in the rat race of like, oh, I've got to be number one, or I've just launched this thing. It's got to is have to do this. I have to do that. I'm just like, whatever the divine's plan is for this, like God's will, not mine. And and basically I'm just like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And as long as I
Yeah.
continue to just be honest and true to who I am, the rest is fodder. Like it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't know if it answered your question.
Yeah, it's approach to what works for you. And yeah, I'm with you. Don't get me wrong. I also like to make money and want to be successful and want to have a business. And the great thing is there's like infinite ways to make money
Yeah.
and to be in business. And um that's what's so great about life.
Yeah. And I think, just to your point earlier, I don't think that everybody needs to subscribe to the whole like, oh, I have to be a certain way. I have to market a certain way. I have to be a seller like this person is a seller, or I have to, look a certain way. I mean, I really think that the more you align with who and what you truly are. And it's like, I don't sometimes I don't like to use the word authentic because I feel like it's been just overused too much,
Mm,
but truly it's just being true to who you are, and not, even if you pretend to be somebody else, people can see right through you. I mean, we can see
mm-hmm.
right through. We know when people are being disingenuous or when people aren't being honest. And if you can tell, that means that if you're doing it, somebody else can tell as well. So I think that if you have these dreams and aspirations of wanting to be a coach like Coach Mike, or you want to be an author, or you want to be a yoga teacher, or you want to be a meditation teacher, ask yourself why you want to do it. I mean, really ask yourself, what is the intention behind it? For me, it's always to provide as much value as I can. I think of the avatar, right? Like you were thinking about the avatar as you were writing your book. I think of the avatar, okay, like who was I at 16 years old? That person, that girl that was lost, that felt like she didn't understand what the purpose of life was. There was just a lot of negative things around. People were ODing, like all of these things. Like, how can I speak to this girl and get her to see, or even just suggest that there is another way?
Mm.
So if I can do that, and if I can create a career and a life around that, then to me, I know, okay, I'm heading in the right direction. I
Yeah.
know that it's right.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And everyone's different. And I think there's no wrong intention if you're not hurting people, in my opinion. Like you can have the intention in this life of selling lipstick and just it all be about, and it's awesome. That's your intention and you want
Yeah.
to shape lips. I spent many years working in music and with pop stars and and also on a few of these shows that are on TV with some of the contestants like that go on these, to be the big singer. And you'll hear a lot of people say, um, why do you want that? Why are you America's, what is it? I'm thinking America's Next Top Model,
Oh,
but why are you the American Idol, or why are you have the X Factor? And you'll hear them. The token answer is because I really want to change people's lives. I can tell you, wrong. Most of them do not want to change people's lives. They never talk about changing lives. They're never interested in changing lives. And they've made themselves believe this fable that somehow they want to be the biggest star because they want to change lives. It's incongruent with their truth. And when it's incongruent, it doesn't work from my experience.
mm,
It's better to lean into exactly why you want to do it. Now, that may
yeah.
be a piece of it, that may be a sliver, but I can tell you, if really what they wanted to do was change lives, they would be on a mission right now, and uh, their life would look a lot different. Now, not say that's a pretty drastic scenario, but the point is, there's no, as long as someone's honest, it's all good. Like, it can be even like tacky, or it could be your own version. People will attract and come into it because that's their thing, as long
Yeah.
as it's what you're really intending.
Yes.
I think it works out. I think it's when we just say something, and I think it actually gets in our own way.
Mm, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, yes, 100%. And I'd be lying if I didn't have the intention of having the desire of getting on the New York Times bestseller list with my book. It's like I'm sure that everybody has that desire.
Everyone
And it's
does,
like, that is, it's not the reason. I'm not writing a book because I'm like, I'm writing a book because it's like, it's definitely a factor.
for sure.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
if to me, if it doesn't happen, it's like that's not going to change my trajectory. Like it's not, it's just going to make me more excited to write the next book or the book after that or the book after that. If that's really what I desire, then it
Yeah, and
it
but the thing is, it's, and what I would say to that is, I would say, you're passionate about creating art that is a lifestyle for you, that's deeply personal, and you want it to be successful so you can keep doing it. You want to write books and you want the book to be successful so you can keep doing the dang thing. Or if it doesn't work out, you could pivot and your art can go somewhere else. That's probably, there's a reason why you're in your career and what you're into and what you're talking about and having this podcast. So like, and I hope I didn't come across as judgmental in this podcast towards people that uh uh maybe are, I just don't think it'll work in the long run. I don't think
mm,
it'll create alignment, and it's okay to be totally who you are. Uh and I'm with you. Like, it feels amazing to become a New York Times best-selling author. I became one and I cried,
mm.
but then I forgot about the next day. But like, you know, and then like I made it a few more times and I was like, whatever. Like, it just wasn't, it's just so funny. We work so hard for something and then we get it and we're just like, all right, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, the first time I got on the cover of a magazine, I was on the cover of Yoga Journal and I was like, "Oh, this is like this was on my vision board." Like I mean, this is such a huge thing. And then literally like the next week I was like, "Oh, okay." Cuz you know what? Somebody else is going to be on the cover next month and
Yeah,
then it's going to have and then it's going to be that's it. But to have that feat, people on the outside might be like, "Wow, like you were on the cover of two magazines." And it's like, "Okay, it didn't do anything. It didn't change my life. It didn't
right.
it didn't make me get any more downloads. It didn't like drastically create this thing. All it does is it makes it look good from the outside. It's like, "Oh, look, this is somebody who's whatever validated." And to me I'm like, okay, it doesn't do actually didn't do anything. And to me, I have different to me, it's the person, it's the email. Oh, I'll try not to get emotional, but it's like the email I get from my aunt who has been doing a practice I sent her, who is crying because she's like, wow, I finally understand what it feels like to be at home in my body, you know. Or one of my students emailing me after working with her for 5 years where she's like, "Wow, I'm finally at a place where that place that I talked about 5 years ago being in my body, in my spirit, in my life,
Mhm.
and it's here now." And it's not because of me. I was able to make these suggestions. It's because of them. And to me, that is more, I mean, that goes straight into my heart. That goes straight into my heart. Being on the cover of a magazine doesn't, you know.
Mhm.
So to me, this feeling is more sustainable. And I'll bring it back to, because I can obviously talk to you for hours, but I want to talk to you about one decision, just one more thing. The one big takeaway that I got was, yeah, these are really actionable things that we can do and implement in our lives. But at the end of the day, my takeaway was this is about sustainability. This is
Mhm.
about long term. This is about creating a life for life, not, oh, for the next 5 months or for the next couple weeks. It's like, no, how do we shift our mindset, our decisions, our perception to look at what is going to sustain us for the long term? You know, me being on the cover of a magazine is not sustainable. Me having an impact in people's lives is sustainable for the long run,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's a really great example that I think is really cool. It's inspiring to me because they both, like, the reality is uh the the making a decision to help your aunt or a student, the result is like this like giant hug.
Mm.
And I keep going to hug, but it's like giant love that comes back. And it's a business because people talk. People are like, oh, Miss Thing is turning it out. Like like it it builds. And it's interesting because that, to me, it reminds me of making a decision uh to help people, or make a decision to become more well known. It's like one feels really empty, the other feels better. Now I've gone this other route, right? We all do this. We all
Mhm.
make, so we talk about one decision, we make over 30,000 decisions a day. So what decisions really matter? What matters? And clarifying our purpose each day matters. And making a decision to do that matters. And it creates this amazing spiritual experience, or whatever someone believes, where we're like, I belong here. And it could be selling lipstick. Like, it's what I'm trying to say is everyone has their own version of it. And sometimes we have to go back to why we do what we do, or why we love who we love,
Mm.
and intentionally get back into that place. And when we do, like you just described, it then inspires me to be like, oh yeah, why don't I tap into that more today?
Mm.
You know, why don't I spend energy towards that? And that's where we talk about in one decision, which I love this part where I'm like boasting my own work, but I love this part because it made sense to me, is when we have a confusion in life, that the hack is to clarify our purpose. It's making a decision to clarify. And I give this example, which is just, it's very simple, but uh, we've all been at around a group of people, or we've gone to an event, or we've gone on a phone call on Zoom or whatever, and we go, why the hell am I here? Or this feels really awkward, or am I okay? How do I get out of this but not be rude? Or do I leave the party? And what we have to remind ourselves is, what's our purpose in this moment? So if we're at someone's house and our purpose is to show up because it's their birthday, it's not about us. Our purpose is to give love to that person because it's a gift that they're here. It's not about us going, I don't like small talk. Okay. That's where we get lost. And I think when we get, it's simple, but it's like anytime we feel lost, we can go, well, what's my purpose with this thing that I'm doing? And I think it's just making a decision to live in purpose. And I think when you describe that with your aunt and a student, it speaks to me because it's a reminder of what is important to me and what connects me to
Mm.
others. And it reminds me of why I've had success. I've had success not because I was a New York Times. I was very successful before I became a New York Times bestselling author. Didn't make me any more successful. Like,
Mm.
didn't give me a giant hug. What gives me a giant hug is being purposeful in my life. And I just think that what you said reminded me of that. So
Mm.
thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I love hugging. And that's the one thing that I miss so much
Yes.
right now. Like I love hugging so much. It releases oxytocin. It makes you feel good. It's just it's a really great. I'm definitely a love language physical touch person. So I am definitely needing some of that. But yes, I like what you're saying and I like what you're describing and I'm so I'm glad that I was able to help that because I feel like you've helped me so much in your writing and the content that you put out there. Like it's very inspiring and I'm just super grateful that you are doing what you do because to me it's like yeah, there are so many coaches out there. There's so many people doing it, but I know like truth recognizes truth and I think that part of your way of doing things like I don't know, maybe it's just because I feel like there's a resonating recognition there and I just your work really speaks to me. So thank you for that.
Oh, well,
Um
thank you. I'll take it all in and I'll not let it go.
Good. Okay, so I obviously like I said I'm looking at the time I'm like wow, we really can go there. So I want to ask you one final question. But before I do, where can everybody go to connect with you? Where can they reach you?
Yeah,
Where do you hang out?
it's it's Coach Mike Bear on coachmikebear.com, Coach Mike Bear socials, um, always evolving podcasts, um, and it's just Coach Mike Bear on everything. And
Okay.
they can buy the book off Walmart, Target, Amazon, anywhere books are sold.
Everywhere books are sold.
Everywhere,
Great.
yeah,
So
yeah,
those of you everywhere. Those
everywhere.
of you listening or watching this, you can go down below if you're watching this on YouTube into the descriptions. We'll put all of those links that Coach Mike just mentioned there. If you're listening to this wherever you get your podcasts, the info button, all the links will be there as well. So be sure to share this with your friends, with family members. Just on your own if you enjoyed this chat with us and please do not forget to get this book, One Decision. It is truly going to change your life and it's going to create a good template for you to start to feel more confident and to start to feel um, more grounded in the decisions that you're making in your life. So, the final question it pertains to this podcast and why I started this podcast in the first place. So, radically loved is this idea that we are radically loved and radically supported by God, Source, baby Buddha, baby Krishna, whatever higher power your understanding is that the universe works for us and not against us. And so the final question to you is how do you feel radically loved?
Um, how do I feel radically love? Can you give me an example of yours? Like,
No,
no, it doesn't work that way. All right,
no.
how do I feel radically loved? And radically means like beyond, right?
Yeah, like radical. So the root word radical actually the word radical uh in Latin is radix, which means the root. So it's almost like the root that is this life force. We're on this rock spinning in the middle of space. Um, and you've been here in this incredible journey, going through all of these obstacles, being an example of resilience in your life. So how do you feel how do you feel radically loved? Like, if radical love is a force in the universe, how do you feel it?
Yeah, I feel it when uh I'm with someone like a friend or whoever, and I see them and they see me, and we're in the moment completely. And there's a uh it's like a perfect acceptance in the moment where we just see each other, and
Mm.
that's when I feel radically loved.
Oh, that's so good. That's good. I love that. I always love to hear people's answers because
Yeah, I'm so curious where people go with that.
yeah, it's great. It's awesome. And especially if I have people on, like if they're on the show again for like a second time, I always like to compare. I'm like, what they say before, does it
Oh
still the
yeah,
same? So it's really great. You should ask that question maybe
that's a
when
great
you do
question.
your next session, because sometimes I mean, I feel like the more we think about that, in my opinion, and I mean, it's really the basis of all my work, is that was always a reminder for me when I was that avatar, that 15, 16-year-old person, that I'm like, okay, if there is, if there is bad things that happen in the world, there also is good things that happen. So what allows the good things to happen? And is
Mm,
that the same force that allows bad things to happen? So then I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a force. Maybe it's just a force. And if I can focus on that force loving me because it's allowed me to survive this long, and it's allowed me to
mm,
continue my path, it's allowed me to have the breath and air in my lungs, and it's allowed for my heart to still continue to beat, then I have to believe that there is a force greater than myself out there.
mm.
And so, and that force to me is radical love. It's God. It's
Yeah.
what, that's why I say, for whatever higher power of your understanding, for me it's God, and I can really go into that, and that's
You
the
know,
place.
I no, you're right. And what's so interesting is as you're bringing that up, so I used to pray a lot, like get on my knees and pray, especially when I got sober. And it's interesting. Again, everyone has their own authentic relationship with the universe or spirituality or whatever it is.
Right.
And I used to pray and I'd say, let your will be done through me and let me go the bondage of, I mean, we've all done all sorts of things, right? So like, and I remember one time I went to pray and I was on my knees and I heard this voice and it was like, why are you talking to me? Go eat a sandwich. You're hungry. And I literally stopped and I went and got a sandwich. And it was like, it changed my relationship, like with this idea of spirituality tremendously. Cause I was kind of like, yeah, if I was God, it'd be like, why are you praying to me? Go eat, you're hungry,
Right.
And like all of a sudden, spirituality made a lot more sense to me,
Yes. Yes.
you
Yes.
know?
Oh, I love that. It's true, but that's what it is. It's not this, mystical. I talk about it in the book. Actually, I wrote a story about how I had a spiritual experience, and I write, like, just because your spiritual experience doesn't have to be this like monumental moment where you hear the words of the divine, or you hear
Right.
this download. It can be as simple as a spontaneous deep breath
Yeah.
you know
Well, let's keep breathing, sister. And
let's do it.
yeah.
Well, I'm so great. Look, I am so incredibly, again, grateful for you, for all the work that you do, and just for being here with us today, for working hard to create this content. Now that I've written a book, I have a whole different appreciation of authors, truly.
Right.
And I'm just so grateful that you put the hours and hours and hours and time into creating this for us. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'm so looking forward to staying connected with you. And I'm excited to just be here with you.
You too, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you. And for all of you listening or watching this, thank you all so much for being a part of the Radically Loved community. We are super grateful for you. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts and share this with a friend or several. Love you.
Love you too. Great.